Hello, I'm Roger Bohmrich. Welcome to this video version of my fine wine essay for Wineauctionprices.com. This episode is entitled Paradigm Shift, Climate, Terroir, and Wines of the Future. And here we go. Wine, by its very nature, is a kaleidoscope through which myriad influences, fixed and changeable, are reflected. Certainly one of the most consequential is the weather each vintage year. As new patterns take hold, they are likely to be echoed in the fruit and afterward the finished wine. In recent decades, previously cool marginal wine regions have been experiencing more regular grape maturity and better quality across vintages. Wine drinkers have in fact been enjoying the pluses of climate change. Our attention shifts now to the future as we grapple with looming questions, perhaps the most important of which is to what extent will wine growing and winemaking be able to adapt to a transformed ecosystem? We have to say, if present trends continue, there is nothing less than a paradigm shift awaiting us by the end of the 21st century. There is no doubt among informed scientists concerning the gravity of the worsening crisis. In 2020, the Alliance of World Scientists issued a statement from more than 11,000 scientists warning that planet Earth is facing a climate emergency. Gases, led by carbon dioxide, together with methane and nitrous oxide, are triggering rising temperatures. In 2021, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change of the United Nations, warns of widespread, rapid, and intensifying climate change. It so happens that the grapevine is highly susceptible to changes in growing season temperatures. A well-known Bordeaux researcher puts it this way: temperature is the major driver of vine phenology. Climatologist Gregory Jones has said that a 1 degree Fahrenheit increase in average temperature would shorten the season from bud break to harvest by between 5 and 15 days. That seemingly small temperature change would shift the ripening phase to a hotter part of summer, in turn altering the chemical composition of the fruit. Dr. Bruce Zucklein suggests that we are likely to see intensifying asynchrony between primary and secondary metabolites in the future. Higher temperatures boost sugars, while lessening desirable aromas, flavors, and phenols. The pleasure we experience from a glass of, say, Cabernet or Syrah could be compromised, particularly if the wine comes from a region already experiencing hot growing seasons. Yet the world is seeing other signs of a disordered climate. Terrible, debilitating frost struck vineyards in waves in 2021 in several parts of Europe, first in April and again a month later. Well, Champagne and Chablis are known for spring freezes, but the larger Burgundy region was devastated, and the rest of France was not spared. Europe's warmer winters signal the grapevine to produce buds and vegetation ahead of the typical timetable. This leaves vineyards far more vulnerable to normal spring frosts, to say nothing of repeated assaults by freakish sub-freezing weather. Well, another sign of a changing climate, harvest dates getting earlier and earlier. This chart depicts harvest dates in France from 1892 to 2014. The solid black line indicates the trend since 1964 and is a composite of Alsace, Champagne, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Saint-Emilion, and Tavel. In this period, harvesting has advanced 4.4 days per decade. In Champagne, harvesting never took place in August until 2003. Yet it has since occurred 6 times in that peak summer month. Higher maturity, more sugar, less acid, could improve meager, sharp, still wines, but it is not necessarily advantageous for Champagne. The practice of using several grape varieties and many vineyard origins in proportions each house desires is, however, a bulwark against a warming climate. Also, the final dosage or sweetening can easily be reduced or eliminated if the base wine is riper. And that is exactly what has been happening. Over the long term, Champagne may no longer enjoy the very cool climate, which has been integral to its reputation for elegant, nuanced, effervescent wines. Will the advantage shift to Britain, where warmer weather is providing a longed-for boost to grape maturity? England is already making some exceptional sparklers with a remarkable resemblance to their French cousins. Certainly one of these is Gusbourne, whose vineyards in Kent are shown here. You might ask, isn't there anything that can be done to counter climate change? Well, if by that term you mean rising temperatures and decreasing precipitation, there are strategies which can be implemented with varying degrees of disruption and cost before temperatures break through the ceiling a grape variety can tolerate. Well, picking can be done earlier of certain varieties or vineyard parcels. The selection of lots and varieties can be changed, adapted. The malolactic for white wines can be blocked, or the must can be acidified. A spinning cone can be employed to remove unwanted alcohol from finished wine. And controversially, water, yes, water, can be added to dilute excessively rich musts. A strategy proposed by no less a celebrity than vintner Michel Chapoutier in reference to Chardonnay du Pape, which might cross the 16% alcohol threshold. He said, it's the future of wine. And in the vineyard, mulching will hold moisture. Irrigation could be introduced or recalibrated to counter increased vine water stress. Pruning can be later to delay the phenology of the vine, and the leaf area to fruit weight ratio could be fine-tuned to maintain optimum ripening of white wine grapes. And finally, harvesting can be done in the cool of night or early morning, which is already taking place in many regions, such as here in the vineyards of Jordan Winery in the Russian River Valley. Replanting with a new cultivar clone and rootstock, as well as utilizing a different form of vine training, could become necessary if circumstances worsen. Unless regulations are rewritten, however, growers in rule-bound European appellations specifically will not be at liberty to introduce modifications such as these, no matter how practical they may be. Climate researchers are providing a glimpse into the future of viticulture beyond 2050. The map on the left shows color coding according to temperature based on the Winkler Index for the period 1981 to 2005. And on the right, the future, the period 2046 to 2070. Let's expand the legend to get a better sense of what the colors represent. I draw your attention specifically to the light blue, which would be the cool or cooler zones, and the orange and red, the warm to hot areas. I think it's very evident if you compare the two maps to see what the future looks like. These projections redraw the map of European vineyards. An altered climate will reshuffle the terroir cards and deal a new hand. Southern Europe and the Mediterranean will be negatively affected owing to a future increase in cumulative thermal stress and dryness during the growing season. In some places, the vine may cease to be viable without adaptive measures. Southern Greece, central Spain, and the Middle East are especially vulnerable. Rioja and Piedmont may be transformed by 2070 from a region 3 to region 5, while Bordeaux could be realigned from a region 2 to region 4. However, high quality areas for viticulture will significantly extend northward in Western and Central Europe, benefiting Southern England, Belgium, Germany, Poland, and the Czech Republic, the areas outlined in the dotted red circle. If there is further warming of 2 degrees Celsius by mid-century, a conservative scenario, academics such as Elizabeth Wolkowicz predict that some cultivars will no longer be suitable for their present viticultural addresses. Wolkowicz and fellow researchers speak of intraspecific diversity, referring to the varied requirements of grape varieties. Swapping or switching, they say, cultivars could reduce global vineyard loss from 56% to 24% under this scenario. But you can see easily from these figures that planting new vines is not a panacea. Taking this a step further, this simplified chart shows the net difference between gains and losses of swapping varieties using 2 examples: late ripening, heat-tolerant Grenache, and early ripening, heat-intolerant Pinot Noir. And you can see quite clearly that Grenache is the variety which stands to gain, whereas Pinot Noir is projected to lose. So there will be losers in the climate sweepstakes. Places which are already warm to hot will suffer most. They have little room to maneuver. Spain, Italy, Southeast Australia, and California. Even in France, cool climate grapes such as Pinot Noir will lose ground. Interestingly, Australia provides a similar example. Research there predicts that by late century, climatic conditions in parts of cool climate Tasmania, which Wine Australia calls the coolest of the cool, may resemble today's Coonawarra and Rutherglen. And if that occurs, Shiraz will be more suitable than Pinot Noir in Tasmania. And what will happen with Tasmania's excellent sparkling wines? A far-sighted winemaker, Dan Petroski of Larkmead Vineyards, is preparing for the day Cabernet Sauvignon may no longer be suited to Napa Valley. He has planted a research block with grapes such as Petit Syrah, Zinfandel, Aglianico, Tempranillo, and Touriga Nacional. He believes that each could be a successful blending partner for Cabernet Sauvignon as a supporting actor until Cabernet can't be used anymore. Still, there could be winners in the climate sweepstakes, such as New Zealand, shown as here. Germany, the Pacific Northwest. As Burgundy starts to perspire, Germany will bask in newfound warmth, and Spätburgunder, Pinot Noir, just might become a star of the future. This is not just theoretical. Alternative grape varieties have already been approved for Bordeaux, specifically the Bordeaux and Bordeaux Superior appellations, limited for now up to 5% of the vineyard surface. These grapes include Marselan, a cross of Cabernet Sauvignon and Grenache, Touriga Nacional, the much admired grape of Portugal, Castet, a nearly extinct variety of Southwest France, resistant to many common vine maladies. Ari Narnoa, shown it right, a cross of Cabernet Sauvignon and Tannat, and in white Albarino of Portugal, or the Albarino in Spain. And finally, Lili Orilla, a cross of Chardonnay and Bordeaux. This raises the question, what will the Bordeaux blend of the future? I think we all agree that this is one of the most iconic models in the world of wine. The formula is very familiar to us. Here on the left bank, Cabernet Sauvignon quite often dominant, then Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, as in the 2014 Chateau Gloria in Saint-Julien. But let's move the clock forward 6 decades and think about what vintage 2074 might look like. Could Côte or Malbec play a significant part? Well, this variety is already in the current regulations for Saint-Julien and other areas, and yet it is scarcely grown. Petit Verdot, yes, of course. Might the climate of the future allow Petit Verdot to ripen successfully every year? And of course, the new grapes, Touriga Nacional, Marselan, Castet, and Ari Narnoa, and perhaps others yet to be authorized. To counter greater heat, vintners have found high altitude locations. Grapevines have been planted at, say 7,000 to 10,000 feet in Chile, Argentina, and China, and at somewhat lesser elevations in many other places, still above historical norms. What's the rule of thumb? Well, temperature drops 6.5 degrees Celsius per 1,000 meters, or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit for every 1,000 feet. Lake County, with several viticultural areas reaching above 3,000 feet, could become a refuge for Cabernet if Napa proves inhospitable. And it may play a very important role because today, something like 3% of California vineyards are above 1,000 feet. Many suggest vineyards could escape heat by migrating to higher latitudes. Relocation, of course, would be a radical option. Moving 1 isotherm Celsius towards the North Pole for each degree of temperature increase may be a useful guide. Well, there are vineyards of grapevine crosses in Sweden and Norway well above the 50th parallel, long seen as the climatic ceiling for Vitis vinifera in the Northern Hemisphere. And indeed, there are even vineyards of Riesling at somewhat higher latitudes. One of those crosses, popular in these areas, is Solaris, pictured here. Well, look at this spectacular setting. The Slinde vineyard in Norway, perhaps the world's most northerly, at the 61st parallel, the latitude of Anchorage, Alaska. Is this the future of wine? It seems inconceivable to us now, but academics are already asking if by the end of this century, Pinot Noir will still find a home in Burgundy, and Cabernet Sauvignon will remain intimately associated with Napa. Discovering new habitats for these and other grapes, which are better suited in terms of climate, is a deceptively simple idea. But merely transplanting Pinot Noir to the cool climate zones of the future does not mean the results will taste like a Chambolle Musigny or Vosne Romanée. The world of wine as we know it is very likely to undergo a metamorphosis as climate evolves. The fabled terroirs romanticized in books, the ones we know and love, those we view as immutable and eternal, may well be turned on their heads. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been interesting and informative. I encourage you to go to wineauctionprices.com to read the essay, which is more extensive than this video presentation, and to look more closely at the graphics. And if you wish to do your own reading, to look over the extensive list of references. Thank you again.